Facebook, live, connected. Rumble, connected. Twitter, X, connected. LinkedIn, connected. This is the booth. We are cleared to go live. Send the signal to the studio and go live.
List with Elizabeth show, ready to go live in 3, 2.
When you think selling and buying a home,
when I think real estate, I think List with Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Klein.
Elizabeth and Klein. And here is the host of the List with Elizabeth show, Elizabeth Klein.
Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Ann Klein, host of the List with Elizabeth show, all things real estate. This show is focused on people buying and selling residential property. Homes, condos, townhouses, whatever you are looking to do, please tune in here for some information on different topics. And I am so excited to host our show today. I would like to invite everyone to share, like, and comment below on the show. Help me get better. I always learn something new every time I do a show, every time I do a deal, every time I do a transaction. Always learning and wanting to share that with everyone out there. But I will tell you the number one success tip, as I open every show with, is to make sure wherever you are in the world, you are aligning yourself with a professional that does this day in and day out, can really guide you and help you through the transaction, whether you're buying or selling. If you need to get connected with a top professional in your area, please reach out to me. I'm happy to make that connection. We have a national agent referral network. As you can see here, you can give us a call at 703-829-LIST. I recently just did a connection for someone in Indiana. So thank you for all that. We are going to get started today here. I just want to share a little bit about my week. It has been a very busy week. Real estate is on a fire right now. It is spring season. Lots of people writing on homes, lots of sellers getting ready to sell their home. And one of the topics that comes up is homeowners insurance. I know it's not something you sit around and think about probably on a daily basis, but when you're going to buy a home, it does become very, very important. So today we're going to focus on homeowners insurance as it relates to buyers, ins and outs of what you need to know. And I'm going to welcome a very special guest. His name is Tim Schaefer with Schaefer Insurance Company. There he is.
Hey, Elizabeth. How are you?
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Very excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for being here today. Tim, if you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your company, and we'll start with that.
Okay, great. My name is Tim Schaefer. As she said, I'm a local independent insurance agent in Maryland. We service the entire DC region and beyond, actually. I'm an independent agent, which means we write for various companies such as Progressive and Travelers and Erie. So we're not captive to one agent. We deal with companies that fit our needs and the needs of our customers. Been doing this for, 41 years, either as a claims adjuster starting out from college for 5 years, and then an agent ever since. We have 2 locations, one in Germantown, Maryland, and an office in Frederick, Maryland. So thank you.
Very good. Very good. I do have to say, personally, I have known Tim for many, many years. And one of the first properties that I purchased, do you remember this, Tim?
I do.
I had a big, crazy day one day. I was coming home from work and I had purchased I owned a condominium in a high rise. I was on the 5th floor of a high rise unit in Maryland.
National Harbor,
Maryland. I was walking home from work and I noticed that the retail store in my building had put a note on their door that they were closed because of an emergency. And I thought, oh gosh, I wonder what's going on. That's so weird. So I proceeded to go into my building, take the elevator up to the 5th floor. And as I got off the elevator and I was walking toward my condo, I heard something strange and I realized it was the carpet and it was slushing and there was water on the carpet in the hallway. And I thought, oh, that's so weird. What's going on? Well, turns out it was coming from my unit. Very quickly realized that I was the reason there was an emergency at the retail store 5 floors below me. And what had happened was I had hired a plumber to do some work in the bathroom while I was gone to work, and they didn't turn off the main water valve before they took off the shower faucet, and it literally flooded my entire condominium, the floor below me, the floor below that, the floor below that, the floor below that, and then the retail store below that. And what did I do? First I cried, and then I called Tim. And I remember, Tim, you actually came. I did not expect that. You physically got in your car and drove down. And I think, like, more than anything, you gave me a sense of relief and calm that, like, someone was here. It's going to be taken care of. We got this. So homeowners insurance is, again, it's not something you think about until you actually need it and you're in the midst of an emergency at times. So thank you again for being here. I truly appreciate you as a person and as a professional.
Sure, my pleasure.
So for home buyers out there, as a realtor, one of the things that my buyers are asked is, hey, you need to get homeowners insurance before you settle on your new home. And so, Tim, can you give us just some basics as far as what buyers would need to know when they are going to be asked this question, and who they should call, what kind of questions they should ask, and what they're looking to get?
Sure. Absolutely. And I want to first start by saying that don't think of an insurance policy as another piece of paper that's on the stack that's required for settlement. Yes, we're satisfying a mortgage company, but that's because they're lending the money to buy the house. So if there is a water issue or a fire or a severe storm issue that takes the roof off the house, they want to be paid. They want their money back. They're not just lending it to you as a favor in return for interest. They want to make sure that that property is protected. So having said that, the homeowner policy is to protect you as the new owner, because it's your largest asset that you'll want to insure properly. So what's required is an insurance certificate to take the settlement showing that it's paid in full for 1 year. So you need to contact an insurance company. You can do that direct, or you can use an agent. And as you've said before, Elizabeth, it's best to use a professional who can guide you through all the ins and outs and make sure you get the custom service that you need. If you go online and you understand insurance, then have at it. But typically, you're not going to know that. You're not going to know the ins and outs. So that's why we're speaking here today. There's 3 main parts of a homeowner policy. So you've got the dwelling amount, which is to insure the structure of the house. That's to rebuild if the house burns to the ground or have a partial loss. And then the second part is your personal property, which is typically a percentage of the dwelling amount. And that should be at replacement cost for all the contents in your home. The homeowner policy also covers loss of use, which basically means if you suffer a severe loss, it could be a flood, it could be a fire, it could be storm damage, hurricane, tornado, so that you're not in a Red Cross shelter, we'll actually rent you a hotel room at first, immediately that night. And then down the road, because it may take a year to rebuild, we'll rent you a furnished home. And if you have pets, we'll accommodate that. So the policy provides a lot more than just if your house burns down and we rebuild the house. The last thing is the personal liability. And back to your example in your condo, had you been responsible for that, let's say you left the water running and the stopper was in the sink and it overflowed and you went off to work and all that was your damage. You were negligent for doing that. That comes back to you personally. So all the damage to not only your unit, but all the units around you, plus that store that had to close, all of their loss of business, that is personal liability back to you. So you want to make sure that you have a proper limit there, and we can talk more about that.
Yeah. It's funny too, just I'd say in the past year, there are two homes that I know of, one in Springfield and one in Burke, that actually burned completely to the ground. And sometimes I think like, oh, those things don't happen anymore and there's fire prevention and everyone's educated but no, I mean two just this year.
Yes.
And the one family did reach out to me, and just like you said, they were lucky they had insurance coverage. They were put up in a hotel. But he said, the grief we're suffering, and we lost our dog, and
Sure.
all of my clothes, our pictures, everything's gone. So it is a very traumatic time in your life, and you don't want to have to be dealing with, on top of that, the issue of where do we stay? What do we do? So get these things taken care of up front. When you're buying a house, it's the perfect time to do it. When you have to do it anyway, do it right. So
Yes.
let's go on to point 2 here. And you may have kind of overlapped a little bit, but what coverage should a new buyer have probably at a minimum, I would say?
So all homeowner policies are going to have the basics, the dwelling amount that I talked about, the personal property, and the personal liability, and the loss of use. They're going to have those things there. So what you want to look out for is the limit of coverage, because you may have coverage for something, but you may not have enough limit. So you want to make sure that on the dwelling portion, that ideally you have a guaranteed replacement cost, which means that if your house is insured for $500,000, but because of COVID and supply chain issues, now drywall has gone up 4 times and roofing material has gone up. You want to make sure that you don't have an upper cap on that limit for replacing the home. Same thing for the personal property. You want to make sure you have a high enough limit for that.
And just like we did recently, it's important every year just to sit down with your insurance provider, make that time to sit down, half hour, and say, hey, let's review what I've got. Let's make sure everything still applies and that sort of thing.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I will say this, most homeowner policies do come with an inflation guard. So that dwelling amount isn't something that if you don't review a year or two, that it's not going to increase, but that's also going to affect the premium. So I'll say this right now, homeowner premiums are rising faster than I've ever seen in my 40-year career. And a lot of it's due to this, the supply chain issues and the cost of insurance. And not only that, just the claims, the storms. I do want to say that a lot of people focus on just themselves. Like, why does my rate go up when it's just me and I haven't had a claim? Well, the nature of insurance is that we all pay into basically a large pot of money that gets invested, of course, but then it's there to pay claims. So as we have a lot of, wildfires and floods and hurricanes and tornadoes, it all gets paid out of this pot. And so insurance rates have to keep up with those claims. So I just wanted to explain that a little bit as well.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, I don't think people think about that, right? They just think about themselves. But it's really all of us as a collective. What are we doing as a society? What's happening to our environment? What's going on with the weather? That it all comes back to each and every one of us in the insurance. Right. Now, for home buyers, usually the insurance is rolled into their monthly payment along with their mortgage, right? Their principal, interest,
and taxes,
property taxes, and insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And then at settlement, Tim, I usually see that there is a collection of insurance payments collected in advance in escrow for the buyers, correct?
Yes. So that makes the policy paid in full for 1 year. And the mortgage company, is comfortable that, yes, we have a policy for a year. And then each and every month that you make your mortgage payment, 1/12 of your insurance gets put into an escrow account. So that when the policy renews the following year, then the insurance company, when they send the policy to the mortgage company just writes a check and pays that for you. So it's one less thing you have to do. But that's how it's tied to your escrow.
Very good. Now, if someone is paying cash for a home or they don't have a mortgage, then they have to make sure that they are getting their own insurance payments in, correct?
That's correct. Correct. And if you're doing that, don't wait to the last minute because you don't have a loan officer bugging you for the insurance.
Right. That's kind of my point is you got to take responsibility.
We are, like I said, one of our insurance companies, Erie Insurance, requires that the agent inspect the house, the exterior at least, before we can provide the certificate of insurance at settlement. So there's a lot of times, unfortunately, that we only have a 2 or 3 day notice and we're scrambling to race out and take pictures of a house because the person's paying cash and they're closing on, Friday. So I would say, particularly if you're not using a lender that's going to push you along, make sure you contact your agent right away.
Okay. So let's go into point number 3, and then I'm going to ask you a specific question. Point number 3, what does the provider need to know? What do you as the provider need to know? Because one of the things clients always come back to me and ask is, hey, my insurance provider is asking, how old is the roof? Right? That's actually probably the number one question that I receive as a realtor. Are there other things that would be helpful for us to proactively collect on the real estate side for our buyers?
Absolutely. Okay. Obviously, a new house, we don't need anything. New house, we don't even inspect it.
Construction.
It's fine. We know it's fine. So we need to start with the age of the house. The older the house, the more information we need to know. We need to know what kind of plumbing does it have? Are we going to have, back in, I want to say the 70s or 80s, there was pinhole leaks that would happen and some of that was even in copper plumbing. And then came along this, like the first wave of the plastic piping had something wrong with it and it burst, and so we had all of these plumbing claims, all these flooded houses from this inferior plumbing. So we ask about the plumbing, we ask about the furnace. Obviously, if you have a 40-year-old furnace, that could possibly create a fire or soot damage, smoke damage from an old furnace. We're not a maintenance policy. This is not a maintenance policy. You don't have an old house and you just let it fall apart. And as things happen, bad things happen, we just pay for everything. The insurance is designed to be sudden and accidental. So we expect there to be a roof that's going to keep water out of your house. And back to the roof issue. Never before has it been such a problem as it is now. Largely, I will say this, because contractors realized that they could make a lot of money if they went door to door, dropping off samples of roofs and saying, we can replace your roof for free. Let us come and look at it. We'll find hail damage, or we'll inspect your roof, and then we'll even kick back your deductible so you don't pay for anything. And then we file a claim and you get a new roof. So that was rampant. And we would get these fly-by-night people coming up from the south or wherever, weren't even local roofing companies that were tried and true and reputable, right? And so they would put a roof on. Sometimes it wasn't even a good roof, and people would have problems down the road. So because of that, and quite frankly, I've had cases where a roof claim has turned into a vandalism claim because the contractor has gone on the roof and damaged the property intentionally, or the roof, in order to get the insurance company to say, yeah, it's damaged and we'll pay for the roof. So that's kind of an aside on the roof issue. We also don't want an old roof that's going to, leak in 3 years. We want to insure a roof that's not too old and it's not too worn. So I have seen, literally 3 weeks ago, we had a new customer come to us, and they had been to 3 different insurance companies that would not insure their home because the roof was 17 years old. They felt that was too old. So fortunately, we were able to write it as long as we inspected the exterior of the home, and we were able to do that. So yes, the roof is very important, mainly because it's been abused, quite frankly. That's pretty much it in terms of information we need to know about the house, other than, obvious things like how big is it, square footage. I will say this too. If you make improvements to the home down the road, you must contact your insurance company as well. If you had a sunroom, if you finished the basement, if you had solar panels, things like that, you want to make sure that those things are properly insured, because now your dwelling amount has gone up and you need to adjust that. Yeah.
And that would be something, if you do touch base with your insurance provider every year, they can remind you, hey, did you do any renovations? Did you do any add-ons? What's going on? I've actually never had a buyer not be able to get insurance on a house. And I know some homes that I have sold have had older roofs. So that's an interesting perspective that you come from, because I've never run into that as an issue.
Okay. Well, normally, I mean, in the past, it's been, if you're up to about 25 years, you could get by with it. But they have really cracked down because of this abuse and the rampant replacement of all the roofs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. So if you want to put up slide,
I also
slide
want to
number
add
4 with insurance history.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, back to the roof, one more thing, to the point that the insurance companies have now utilized aerial views where they contract with that company that flies around and takes pictures of homes, and every home, kind of like a Google Earth thing, is taking a picture of the roof, and they're sent a letter. These are for current policyholders who we've had for years, and they get a letter saying your roof is too old. We can see that there's wear and tear. You need to replace your roof. So that's just furthering the example of how roofs are so important today to insurance companies.
That's really amazing. I had no idea.
Yes.
I actually didn't know you also went out and viewed the home on the exterior before you issued the policy for new buyers.
Well, one good thing for that is that if the house does burn down, we have pictures of what the house looks like.
That's
so
amazing.
It kind of makes sense. We want to know what we're insuring. Well, the other part of that is just general housekeeping. I have found townhouses where the owner was now this wouldn't be so much for the new buyer, but because hopefully the house is in pristine shape at that point. But I have gone out and seen, deck railings that are missing. Or do you ever see where it might be a newer home, but they never put a deck on the back, and they've got the slats of wood across the sliding glass door off of a second-story dining room?
I just did one
where
of those
a deck should be, and sometimes that safety guard is not there. So we can't insure a house without a safety guard or a second-story deck without a railing, because again, that third part of the policy, or fourth part, which was the personal liability, if somebody comes into your house and they fall off your deck because there was no railing, you're going to get sued. So you need a lot of money on your insurance policy to pay that claim if you're sued for being negligent there.
I have a question for you as well. This came up with one of my buyers. They were looking at a home. It was a single family home, detached home on a corner lot, and it was right by an elementary school, and it had lots of sidewalks, right, for the kids and families, and it came around because on the corner lot. And the buyer said, this is too much liability. We don't want to have to come out and be constantly shoveling these sidewalks to make sure no one gets hurt.
Trust me, that's us. We're on a corner lot by an elementary school. Same thing. And
there you go.
And I hate it. I gotta say, I hate it. Yeah. But yes, and that's part of your personal liability. If you don't shovel your walks, including up to your front door, and somebody slips and falls, you can be sued for that.
So if the I don't know, Amazon delivery guy, right, is walking up your driveway to put a package on your doorstep, and he slips and falls.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is correct. It's
So,
personal liability. Right. Dog bite claims are a big one. Dogs. And it doesn't have to be a bite. I actually was when I was an adjuster, I paid a claim for a woman who was riding on her bicycle. The homeowner's dog got out the door, ran up to her, scared her. She fell off and she broke her arm, had to have multiple surgeries. And I believe it was, if I remember correctly, and this was, a long, long time ago, it was a $150,000 claim.
Wow.
That the bicycle rider sued, didn't sue, but made a claim against the homeowner, and we paid that because we were insuring the home, and we paid that claim. So back to what's required by the insurance company, the mortgage company, don't just rely on what's required. Understand the coverage and buy what you need. Right. Because the more assets you have, the more you stand to lose, and you don't want to be sued and not have enough coverage under your homeowner policy because you had a low limit, and the mortgage company only required $300,000 of coverage. You may need $500,000. You may need $1 million. You may need a personal umbrella policy which is another topic, which is
Mhm.
excess liability in case you have a severe issue. Um,
Hmm.
my classic story of that was in DC, probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago, had a couple in a row house by the Capitol, and a fire broke out the night that they were home, and it burned all 6 houses in a row, all
Wow.
six townhouses in a row. So, of course, they were with Erie with me, and the next one was Allstate, the next one was State Farm, and I think there was a USAA. So all the insurance companies paid their own, policies that they insured, right? And then, gosh, about 4 months into it, they get suit papers. They were being sued by all the other insurance companies, wanting their money back, saying that our insured started the fire.
Wow.
Because they had a wooden deck on the back with a gas grill. They had candles lit. And of course, the insurance companies investigate the what, where, and when, and what was being done at the time. And they said, oh, yeah, those people were, barbecuing out on their deck and must have fallen asleep and left the candles burning, burnt their house down and all 6 houses. So that was a case where we paid the dwelling, we paid the personal property, we paid the loss of use. Even back then was $5,500 a month for a furnished home on Capitol Hill, right?
Right.
So then if that wasn't bad enough, right, because they lost everything, then they're getting sued by all their neighbors' insurance companies stating that they started the fire. So fortunately, I had heard that there was an arson case that broke in DC. And so I said, hey, make sure you investigate that this wasn't a possible, arson situation. So long story short, they had an umbrella policy, each $1 million. It happened to be a gay couple, and back then we couldn't do joint policies for 2 unmarried people. So they each had $1 million. So those policies kicked in and were ready to respond. Fortunately, they weren't able to prove that they were at fault in starting those fires.
Okay.
So I think it was a $100,000 claim that kind of went away. But that's an example of somebody using all aspects of their homeowner policy, from the dwelling, the personal property, the loss of use, and the personal liability, all in one fire.
All in one.
That was a good example. And of course, they turned out to be, and they always were, but they were my best client and referral source. They referred everybody to us, and they just couldn't be happier with the service, because they had a good insurance policy. They had great limits. They had replacement costs. They had guaranteed replacement costs on the dwelling. And they each had $1 million liability for their catastrophic loss.
So I didn't realize how exciting your job was until that story. That's like the script to a movie, right?
It is. I could tell you.
It really is.
I could tell you.
That's the thing. The juicy stories. That's what we want to hear.
The strange, just very odd things. Well, and very sad things too. We've had, more so somebody with a rental property where the tenant died and wasn't discovered for several weeks.
Oh my goodness.
And the damage was immense, because it went into the subflooring, and it was a condo.
My goodness.
And it just, I don't want to get too graphic, but it was a $50,000 claim just because a tenant died in the unit. And the property policy paid, at least with Erie Insurance, they paid the entire thing. So again, I can't stress enough having good coverage with good limits, and knowing what you have. I mean, a lot of people ask me, how do you compete with online carriers and direct writers, people going to progressive.com and getting a policy? I said, I really don't, because I educate people. I don't have to sell insurance. I tell these stories, and I give examples, and I make it understandable, and people want that, and it sells itself, quite frankly.
Also, just going back to when I had my insurance claim, just having someone to call that I already know, that has educated me, that I have a relationship with, that's going to literally you jumped in your car and you came down that day.
Right.
And I was just like, I can't even believe you're here. Like, thank you so much. Like, you're like a friend all of a sudden, that it's like that commercial where, was it which insurance agency where State Farm is there and the insurance, like the catastrophe is happening and then the insurance guy shows up.
Yes.
That actually happened and you actually showed up.
Right.
Thank you again for that day. I know
You're
that was
welcome.
a long time ago,
You're
but
welcome.
it was traumatic. And, when you're in the midst of stress and in turmoil, you don't want to have to think and find your policy and find your 1-800 number and put in a code to it and wait till Monday for them to call you back. You need help instantly.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, producer, if you want to put up slide number 4, insurance history. This is something that I learned in doing real estate. So when buyers are shopping for insurance policies, the insurance company that they're calling can look back on all of the policies that the home they're buying has had in the past. Correct, Tim?
That is correct. So there is a national database. It's called Clue. And we put in the information and we can not only get the past claims from the seller, but also you as a buyer. So let's say you're renting now and you had a theft of a bicycle under your renter's policy and you're buying this house. We can see your theft of your bicycle on your renter's policy. Plus we can see a water claim in the house that you're purchasing. So it's both. And the reason for that is because we want to be able to charge an appropriate rate, because statistically the chance of you having a future loss is directly related to your loss history and frequency, right? So
that's like a whole other topic, right?
It is a whole, and let me just say, since I brought up the DC claim, and the guys would love me for sharing this, but in their situation, they had insurance for many years with me, and so about a year or so before that major fire, they had a theft of a laptop, right? And they called up and said, "Hey, Tim, should we make a claim? We never, we pay all this insurance money and we never make a claim. We never get anything out of it. Should I make a claim?" And I'm like, "Well, I can't predict the future, but if you want to make a claim, here's your $1,200. They got the $1,200, right? Then they had a second loss within 3 years, right? So now they have this major fire, and it wasn't so much that it was a major fire. It was because they had 2 losses in a 3-year period. The house took so long to rebuild that they ended up buying another house on Capitol Hill, right? Mm-hmm. So they were going to keep one as a rental and then keep the new one, right? Okay. When I went to insure the new one, their rate was like, and this was 20 years ago, $5,000 a year, because they had 2 claims on their record. So again, frequency matters more than $1 million claim. So you really want to not make small claims on your home policy ever. You want to take a deductible that's comfortable for you, $1,000, $1,500, something you're comfortable paying any given loss, and let the insurance company pay for the more serious things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so one
again,
of the issues.
So again, it's good to have an agent, because you're not going to call an insurance company and get them to tell you that.
No, exactly.
In fact, if you go direct to an insurance company and you call up and say, "Hey, should I make this claim or not?" Well, you've already made the claim, because you've already voiced that to somebody.
Yeah.
Whereas
they're just going to write it up.
You can call me, off the record and say, "Hey, what do you think I should do?" And if it's a simple matter, I'm just going to tell you to pay it and don't, I'll talk you through it. Make the best.
No, I love that. So I had buyers once that they were buying a townhouse, super excited about this townhouse. They had written like 4 offers, finally got their offer through. They went contingent free outside of the 3-day HOA doc review period. Mm-hmm. So we'd passed their 3 days, and they were now at the point where they're shopping for their homeowners insurance. And they called me in a absolute panic about 7 days after going under contract. So again, we've passed the point of no return, right? They are buying this house. Mm-hmm. The insurance company they were shopping with told them that the home they're buying had a major flood on the main level X number of years ago. And they were just up in arms about this. Why didn't the sellers tell us? What's going on? Are we in a flood zone? Like, I mean, this was, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night. I mean, I remember it being at a time where I couldn't instantly get them answers. And they probably had, the worst night of their lives, just worrying about this, stressing about this.
Sure.
So turns out that once we did have a chance to ask the sellers what had happened, they were so happy to disclose everything. The refrigerator leaked and it did damage their hardwood floors. And they were the kind of sellers that everything was pristine and perfect. And they always took care of their home perfectly. So they ripped out the entire first floor and put brand new subflooring, brand new hardwood, and basically had all the receipts. They had everything documented. And my buyers were like, oh, okay. So just like the refrigerator leaked. Like, okay, it's not, a big deal. So now I advise my seller clients, hey, if you've had any past insurance claims that you think we should maybe mention up front to allay the buyer's fears, because they're going to find out about them once they go under contract, let's just disclose it. So I'm trying to prevent that from happening when I have a listing.
Right.
And I don't want buyers on the other side, to potentially have a contingency where the insurance company scares them and then they walk on the deal when it's really not, it could be a non-issue.
Right. Yes.
Again, buying and selling a house, there's so many layers to this. And today we're just scratching the surface on, the insurance portion.
And that's why it's good to give as much lead time as you can to your agent so that we can be working on the property and pulling the records and finding out if there's any claims in the past that may be an issue. And we've had that very same thing where we then just say, hey, we need this documentation to prove this has been done. And a lot of times in that case, I would go out as the agent and make sure and check the basement, check the first floor. Because in that situation, we don't want mold. We don't want, because a lot of times when that happens, now your seller sounded like they were very fastidious and went, above and beyond. A lot of people may try to just wing that on their own, use a shop vac, clean it up and, polish the floor and sort of hope that, nobody, even if they make the claim, I've had cases where people make the claim, get paid from the insurance company, keep the money and still try to use the shop vac and kind of do it on their own. And then down the road, there's mold. And we obviously, as the new insurance provider, the new insurance company, we don't want the new owner calling a year later saying, you know what, we've got mold growing in the basement.
Yeah.
And it's in the HVAC system. And we want, is there coverage for that? The answer is no, but you obviously want to avoid that. So this is actually protection for you, for your buyer, because they don't want surprises down the road that most likely aren't going to be covered.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, we're insuring sudden and accidental losses. We're not insuring the seller who had a water claim that wasn't mitigated properly and they didn't thoroughly do it to prevent mold. And now the buyer down the road has a problem. So
all kinds of ins and outs, right?
All kinds of ins and outs. Yes,
one of the questions that I do want to chat with you about is when the insurance policy kicks in for the new buyers, how long the sellers should keep their insurance policy on their home. Because here's the situation a lot of times. The settlement date and the transfer of ownership is not always known the exact moment in time. And here's why. Usually right now, buyers and sellers do not close on the same day. Sellers usually close a day or two ahead of the buyers in a different spot and location. Then on settlement date, the buyers close. Sometimes the buyers are closing remotely. So for example, I just had some buyers in Hawaii closing on a Friday, 4:30 p.m. Hawaii time. So it really didn't close right for the sellers on Friday because the paperwork then had to be shipped. Once the title company received the paperwork in Virginia from Hawaii, which wasn't until probably Monday, then they have to record it in the courthouse. And it's at that moment in time that the transfer happens. So let's say over the weekend, a tree falls on the house, right? And maybe the sellers thought, oh, I sold the house on Friday. Friday was closing day. So I canceled my insurance policy on Friday. And the buyers didn't start their policy because they don't really own the house until they own the house. So there's this gray area of what do you recommend for sellers and for buyers?
Well, fortunately, it's customary among insurance companies to go by the settlement date that's on the HUD-1 form.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So because
Because
the
of
new
this situation.
well, yeah, because the new policy
Yeah.
from the new insurance company is in force on that date. So they're going to be on the hook for that over the weekend. If the seller wants to have a safety net, by all means, just don't cancel for a week after the settlement date. I mean, it's going to be pennies for the insurance group, right?
Yeah.
But I've never in 40 years, I've never had an issue where personally, I've never had an issue where that has come up where there was wiggle room. Now, having said that, we never recommend, like, people always want to call us in advance and say, hey, settlement's going to be May 15. Can you cancel my insurance? We get that a lot.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Because they don't want to
cancel
forget
that insurance.
They want to get their penny back.
Leave the money.
Every penny back. So they want to make sure that we do it in advance for May 15. And we say, no, we don't recommend that for the very reason that there's all sorts of delays that can happen. So you never want to do in advance of a settlement date, for sure. And if you want to be extra cautious, just give it an extra couple of days and then cancel that. But
so let's say the settlement date is supposed to be May 15th, and the buyers have it set up for May 15th, but then it gets pushed back to May 18th. Will the insurance usually slide with the change of settlement date, or they go by the original?
Unfortunately, we have to write a whole new policy.
Okay, so it's going to be in force a little bit early.
Well, it depends on if the mortgage company will allow that. Some want to see it on the effective date of the settlement date because they want that full annual policy to be in existence.
Oh, right.
So normally if it's bumped, I mean, if it's a day, sometimes they'll let us just, if it's supposed to be the 15th, it doesn't settle till the 16th. But it's pretty much at the mercy of the mortgage company. The lender has the final say. But a lot of times, like, typically, if we have it all the time, I'd say on a weekly basis, where they're asking for an insurance policy up front in advance of the settlement date, because the mortgage company the loan officer wants to have all of their paperwork in, right? We'll just give a binder, which is we're binding them the coverage, but we're not actually issuing the policy. And that's kind of a technical thing, but we do that because we don't want to get into a situation where we process a policy, it gets mailed out, it's already in the mail, and then a week later we find out that the settlement date has been changed. We have to start all over from scratch and redo the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good to know, because settlement dates do change.
They do.
And sometimes they get bumped up. Sometimes you get an anxious buyer and the seller's already moved out, and the title companies and the mortgage company say, yep, we can bump it up. And then I guess you guys have to bump it up too.
That's why we just do a binder, which is like a certificate of insurance. We do that in advance, and then we settle up. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's move on to our last slide here of costs, insurance costs. What should buyers expect? I know this is a very open-ended question, but I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, it's very, very tough because obviously there's so many variables. It can vary by zip code. It does vary by zip code. So location definitely matters. The dwelling amount, the personal property limit, and then we didn't talk about so much other needs that a buyer may have. If you've got jewelry that you need to insure, then you have to add that to the policy. And then I think we touched on insurance score, which is tied to credit. So that's going to vary greatly from person to person.
If I have two buyers buying in the same row of townhomes, same exact home, two couples,
it can vary.
And they're buying the same exact insurance policy. It can vary based on their credit, if they have jewelry, if they add on umbrella policies, that kind of thing.
Or if they're bringing prior claims, because remember, from your prior policy, whether it was a renter's policy, a condo policy, or a prior home policy, and you had theft of a bicycle or theft of jewelry or a water damage claim, toilet overflowed, and you've got some claims, we count that. We look back. Well, Virginia's 5 years, Maryland and DC are 3 years. But if you bring a claim on your record to this new policy, you're going to pay more for that because you're a higher risk of future claims.
Wow. I didn't know there was an insurance score, like a credit score.
It is.
What do you call it? Insurance score?
Insurance score. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And some states don't allow it, but some states do.
Oh,
and
interesting.
you just need to, just
know your state.
That's why it varies so much. But actually, they've also gotten it down to where even the rate can vary based on the zip +4, which is just the same zip code, but that 4 designates a different neighborhood. Because they're with computers now, they're calculating the increased chance of wind. I believe they're looking at neighborhoods with older, mature trees, and if there's more chance of trees falling. I mean, it's crazy what they do now.
Wow.
There's so many factors, so you can't predict. And again, that's why you want to start early with insurance. Get different quotes if you'd like. Shop around, and by all means, bundle it with your auto insurance. That is not just a cute slogan for commercials. That is definitely true.
Okay.
You definitely want to bundle your home and your auto together to get the best rate if you can. And back to the personal property, just know that there are sublimits on personal property. So let's say you have a house that's $500,000 is the dwelling amount to rebuild it. You may get, say, $300,000 limit for personal property. That's 60% of the dwelling amount. And you say, okay, great, I got $300,000 worth of coverage for everything in my house. Well, not quite, because there's 4 sublimits for jewelry, furs, guns, and silverware.
Wow.
Furs and silverware are not so much a big deal anymore, but guns and jewelry can be. So again, not all policies are the same. They're all going to have those 4 basic, the dwelling, the personal property, the loss of use, and the personal liability. But then within the policy, it's going to vary greatly. Some will give $1,500 for a piece of jewelry. Some will give $3,000 for a piece of jewelry with a maximum of $10,000 total. And after that, you need to have your jewelry scheduled, which means you provide us with an appraisal and we insure it. So you're going to typically look at your more expensive pieces, and that's going to be a line item on your policy. So it's all customizable based on what you need.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
One last question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one last question. For people buying a home, and you keep saying to start early, give a lot of advance notice, can someone start shopping for homeowners insurance before they identify the final house, like while they're hitting open houses and looking at neighborhoods, or do you really have to have that address in place before you can get started on your end?
Yeah, you have to have the address in place. Yeah. So as soon as you know that I would say when you're putting a contract, after you put a contract on a house, that's when you should be looking for insurance. That would be a good time.
All right, great.
So.
Well, Tim, I'm literally amazed. You're like a superhero, TV script undercover every day. What you do in your work is really incredible. I'm sure you have more stories to share.
Absolutely.
But if you want to tell people how to get a hold of you, I certainly recommend talking to Tim Schaefer personally and as a realtor for my buyer clients and even existing seller clients that are looking for a change or going to buy a new house.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, the easiest way is my main office number is 301-428-0282. You can call or text to start with us there. I've got an amazing staff at both offices that provides customer service. They're all licensed agents. So when I'm doing something like this, my clients are well served by my staff. But yes, feel free to give me a call. And I'm more than happy to discuss anything with anybody. Even if I don't think you're going to become a client, so don't feel that that's an issue. I have had USAA clients call me, and because their financial planner has suggested that they call me, and I give them advice, and some have actually become clients because of that. So I am more than happy to bounce things off of. You feel free to bounce things off of me and to just ask any questions that I can help with. So
Okay.
thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's always a pleasure to chat with you and hear your stories, and hopefully we'll hear more down the road.
Yes.
So everyone, thanks for tuning in today to the List with Elizabeth show. If you have any insurance questions, please reach out to Tim Schaefer. Any other questions, reach out to me, 703-829-LIST. And if you need a referral agent out of the Northern Virginia area, also reach out. I'd be happy to provide that. Have a wonderful time at your day, and I will see you on the next episode.
When you're ready to sell your home,